Alright, so starting at the bottom is binary fission. So binary fission we just went over. And binary fission is when a parent cell splits in half and produces two identical cells. In our notes that y'all just did, the example was the amoeba cell. And we're going to go ahead and draw it one more time. So remember, step one, you start with just one cell. So they're kind of a weird shape, but they have their nucleus, so you start with one cell. Then step two, you still only have that one cell, but your nucleus divides. So step two, the nucleus divides. You still only have one cell, so it's not pinching in half yet. In step three, your cytoplasm starts to pinch in. Just draw the best you can. And you have two nucleus, one on each side. So cytoplasm splits. And step four, you end up with two genetically identical cells. No, so the shape might not be the same, but the DNA, so I'll put that on there. Their DNA is the same. The shape might not be identical, but the DNA inside the cell is the same. So they're going to look identical to the parent. All right, the next one that we just did was called budding. And budding is when offspring or new cell grows off of the side of the parent and eventually breaks off. In our example from our notes, the test question one was the hydra. So offspring grows off the side of the parent and eventually breaks off. Now, what you can do is draw an arrow from binary fission and point it at the pictures you drew right here. And we're going to take advantage of that blank space down at the bottom, and I want you to draw an arrow from budding to a little bit further down your page there so we can draw what that looks like. Just in the blank space at the bottom. All right, so when you're doing budding, we start with one cell. So your cell has its nucleus. Step 1, you have one cell. Step 2 is you're going to have a bulge start to form in the side of the cell, and the nucleus is going to start to move towards it. So bulge forms, and nucleus moves that way. Okay, so that is step 2. Step 3, that bulge is going to get bigger, and your nucleus is also going to divide and copy itself. Okay, so you're going to have a little pocket start to form, and you have 2 nucleus. So bulge starts to close, and you have 2 nucleus, or nuclei. And your last step, step 4, is you're going to end up with 2 cells, one big one, one little one, but they are genetically identical. So they're genetically identical, even though one is big and one is small. They have the same DNA. Everybody good there? All right, go up to regeneration. And I'll put the pictures back up at the end. Regeneration is when an organism is cut or broken. It will regrow the rest of its body. And an example of that is a starfish. So when a starfish breaks its arm off, an entire new starfish will grow from that arm. So the old one will regrow its arm, the new one will grow a whole new starfish. So you have your Patrick Star here. Then, so that'd be step 1. Step 2. Oh boy, loses an arm. Step 3. You end up with 2 two identical starfish. So they both grow. So the one regrew its arm, and that arm grew an entire new starfish. That is called regeneration. There are worms that do that as well. You can cut a worm in half, it will regrow a tail, and one will regrow a head. And the last one here is vegetative propagation, which is kind of like regeneration, but you're growing a plant from a piece of a plant. And an example is a potato. So you cut a chunk of potato off, you plant it in the ground, it will regrow a potato. You can just chop up a potato into little bitty bits and spread it around and plant it all, and you'll have a whole bunch of potatoes. We all good there? All right, flip it over. Now in the back you have a chart. So we're going to go through this. So the first one is we're looking at a potato. Well, what did we just say? How do potatoes reproduce? What form of asexual reproduction? What's it called on the back of this page? So vegetative propagation. And how many parents are involved in that? One. Why? Because it is asexual reproduction. You always have one parent. All right, the next one, a starfish. How does a starfish reproduce? Regeneration. So you break its arm off, now you have another one. And again, how many parents are there? Just one, because it's still asexual reproduction. A spider plant. So a spider plant, a hint there is that it is a plant. So which one of those that we went over sounds like something with plants? What did you say? Vegetative propagation. So I'm just going to write VP because we already wrote it all out. If it's a plant, it more than likely is vegetative propagation. And again, there's only going to be one parent. That's going to be your trend this whole way down. An onion's a plant, so it reproduces by what? Vegetative propagation. And again, one parent. You're just cutting a chunk off it and planting it. That's not two onions, just one onion. All right, a planarian, which is a worm. What did I say about the worms? Regeneration. You can cut it in half and it will regrow. And again, one parent. All right, yeast. If we look back in your notes, what did yeast reproduce by? It was yeast and hydra. Look back at your notes. We highlighted it. budding. And there's one parent. Poison ivy plant. Vegetative propagation. It's a plant. Yeah, so you're noticing they're all one. Why? Because it's all asexual reproduction, so it's all going to only be one parent. And the last one, paramecium, which was in our notes. Binary fission. And that is one parent as well. Last thing we got to do is flip to the back. We're not going to do the whole Venn diagram, but we're just going to do the part with asexual reproduction. So flip that over. And we need to write down our facts about asexual reproduction. So, first thing we want to write down is asexual reproduction is how many parents? One parent. What do the offspring look like? Yep, so offspring are identical to the parent. And then underneath that, write in parentheses, same DNA. All right, and then what was one type? So we're going to write types. What was one type of asexual reproduction? Vegetative propagation. And what was our example of that? Potato. Good. What was another kind? Regeneration. And what was our example of that? Starfish. What's another one? Budding. And what was our test question example? Not yeast. Yeast does do budding, but there was a test question answer of it. Hydra. Good. And then the last form is what? Say it louder. Binary fission. And what was our example of that? Right where you drew your pictures? Amoeba. Amoeba cells do binary fission.